Welcome to the deep dive. You've handed us your notes on Fyodor Dostoyevsky's colossal work, Crime and Punishment. Our mission today is to cut through the immense scope of this novel and extract the most psychologically dense insights from Raskolnikov's intellectual crime, connecting his feverish internal world to the harsh reality of 1860s Russia. This week, we're in the world of Crime and Punishment, a turbulent and psychologically dense classic. We'll be discussing Raskolnikov's Sin and Punishment. I'm your host, and today we'll be talking about an immortal work that has been adapted numerous times. We're diving into the intense social and philosophical atmosphere of 1860s Russia. If you're ready, I'll begin.
And I think it's really crucial we start with the author himself. I mean, this novel, it's such a mirror of Dostoyevsky's own crisis at the time.
Absolutely. He wrote Crime and Punishment in 1866 under just unbelievable pressure, didn't he?
He really did. We know he was drowning in these massive gambling debts, and he had this incredibly tight deadline from his publisher. He actually risked losing all the rights to his work if he didn't deliver.
Wow. So he was writing incredibly fast.
Extremely rapidly, yeah. Often in hotels, apparently. And this was shortly after he'd returned from that terrible experience of Siberian exile. The existential horror, as you put it.
That background, it isn't just color, is it? It feels like it explains the book's whole manic, feverish style.
Precisely. The novel is a direct reflection of that personal turmoil and also the wider social unrest. You feel the paranoia, the speed, that almost claustrophobic intensity in the narrative itself.
That's so true. It's definitely not just a simple murder mystery or, a story about poverty.
Not at all. It's more like a pressure cooker. Built on that social upheaval, the extreme deprivation people faced, and these huge philosophical debates that were raging back then.
Things like nihilism and radical individualism.
Exactly, though. So the core tension in the novel really forces us, and you, the listener, to confront is, how do these established ideas, morality, crime, punishment, justice, atonement, how do they hold up?
Especially when challenged by one person's very specific ideology, coupled with just crushing poverty.
That's the heart of it.
Okay, so let's maybe unpack Raskolnikov's environment first, because his physical state really seems to lay the groundwork for his mental catastrophe.
It does. Our sources paint a picture of intense physical deprivation for him as a student. He's living in that infamous coffin-like yellow room.
Right, wearing that tattered coat. So isolated, there's that comparison to a turtle drawn into its shell.
And what really stands out is the complete lack of basic human needs. His landlady, Praskovia Pavlovna, she just stopped bringing him food for 2 whole weeks.
2 weeks, he just sat there.
Just sat there, literally starving. Couldn't even apparently motivate himself to talk to the servant girl to ask for anything.
That level of intense physical and psychological deprivation, it feels like the perfect breeding ground for some kind of radical justification for crime.
And that leads us straight into his terrifying idea, the extraordinary man theory.
Ah, yes, this chilling ideology.
It's built on dividing all of humanity into basically 2 classes. You have the ordinary people. Their job is just obedience, maintaining the status quo, following the law.
Keeping things stable.
Right. But then you have the extraordinary ones, the potential Napoleons, the great thinkers, the leaders.
And they get special rules.
According to Raskolnikov's theory, yes. They possess an inherent right to commit certain crimes. He calls it a single evil, if it helps them step over obstacles for what they see as a greater societal good.
So the murder he plans is supposed to be the ultimate test, to prove which category he belongs to.
That's exactly it. It's the test of his own status.
But hang on, if poverty was such a driving force, why cling so fiercely to this complex theory? Why not just, commit a simple theft if he was starving?
That's a great question. I think it's because the theory provides meaning. It gives him a sense of dignity where his life has absolutely none.
So it wasn't just about the money.
Not purely. He needed to believe his suffering wasn't just pathetic destitution, but actually part of some grand intellectual experiment. It elevates his situation in his own mind.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the living proof of the kind of social suffering he thinks his theory will fix. That arrives with Marmeladov, right?
Yes, the perpetually drunk former clerk. We meet him in that tavern, pouring out his desperate life story.
Marmeladov's tragedy is just heartbreaking, but he says something profound, doesn't he? About pity.
He does. He lands on this truth. Every person must have a place where others can pity them. It's this plea for basic human connection.
Which is such a stark contrast to Raskolnikov.
Immense contrast. Marmeladov, even in his degradation, seeks pity and connection. Raskolnikov is all about intellectual justification and isolation.
And the deepest tragedy, the one that sort of fuels Raskolnikov's argument internally, is Marmeladov's daughter, Sonya.
Sonya. Her desperation forces her to sell herself. She actually gets a license, the yellow ticket, just to stop her family from starving to death.
This awful, inescapable reality, that's the social problem Raskolnikov believes his theory is designed to solve by getting rid of the pawnbroker.
Precisely. By eliminating the useless, as he sees her, parasitic pawnbroker, Alona Ivanovna, he thinks he's striking a blow against this kind of suffering.
So the poverty and the theory set the stage. Let's look at the act itself. The moment that ideology meets cold, hard reality.
Right. He plans the murder meticulously, down to fetching his father's old watch to pawn as an excuse to get in.
And the amount she offers is just insulting, isn't it? 1 ruble 15 kopecks with 35 kopecks interest due back.
It's incredibly petty. And the contrast between that tiny sum and the magnitude of the intellectual liberation he's planning, it's just stark.
It really is. And of course, the meticulous plan completely shatters the second he actually does it.
Instantly. The theory demands this controlled, almost clinical execution, but reality delivers pure chaos.
It starts immediately with the double murder, which wasn't part of the plan at all.
Not at all. He's utterly shocked when Alona Ivanovna's half-sister Lizaveta walks in. She's described as gentle, terrified, basically Alona's slave.
And he kills her too.
Instantaneously. In sheer panic. It's not calculated. It's reactive terror. That double murder is the first catastrophic failure of his controlled experiment.
And what about the supposed motive? Enrichment. Using the money for his future extraordinary deeds.
That collapses too. He's in such a state he only manages to grab a small purse from Alona's neck. He just flees.
Doesn't he realize later he missed a huge sum?
He does. He later realizes he completely missed a box in the chest of drawers containing something like 1,500 gold rubles, the very treasure that was supposed to fund his future and prove his theory.
So he fails even at the crime part of his plan.
Completely. He flees in utter terror. He can't even bring himself to look at the small haul. He did get a chain, some earrings, a little purse.
He just hides it.
Shoves it all under a big stone in an outside yard. The theory demanded he use this wealth for a noble cause, but the panic just invalidates everything. The second his theory hits reality, Raskolnikov is exposed, not as extraordinary, but as an ordinary, terrified murderer.
So his real punishment isn't the legal system, at least not initially?
No, it's immediate and entirely psychological. Agonizing torment, paranoia. He descends into this state of perpetual fever, convinced everyone suspects him. Every glance on the street, every official he sees.
He thinks they're on to him.
Constantly. Like that man near the canal who just throws a slur at him. Raskolnikov is convinced it's loaded with meaning.
And this internal agony gets amplified by external events, right? Particularly his sister Dunya's engagement.
Yes, her engagement to Pyotr Petrovich Luzhin. That brings the conflict right to his doorstep.
And Luzhin is, well, he's a piece of work.
He's a truly awful character. His morality is purely transactional. He openly admits he sought a wife who was poor.
Why poor specifically?
So that he could perpetually rule her. He wanted someone indebted to him, someone he could constantly remind of her obligation, ensuring her total obedience. It's just sickeningly calculating.
And the irony is huge here. Raskolnikov, fresh from committing this brutal double murder,
suddenly finds himself overcome with this fierce, almost primal moral pride, defending his sister's honor.
He really explodes at Luzhin, doesn't he?
He does. He tells him Dunya will have to choose between them. And then he issues that incredible threat. If Luzhin speaks ill of their mother, Raskolnikov will physically throw him down the stairs.
It's such a raw, non-intellectual moment of morality.
Exactly. It shows that his conscience, his soul, whatever you want to call it, isn't entirely dead. Despite the theory, despite the crime, some basic human decency flares up.
His mental state gets further tested by those two brilliant foils Dostoyevsky brings in, Porfiry Petrovich and Svidrigailov.
Yes. Porfiry, the examining magistrate, and Svidrigailov, the dark, morally bankrupt aristocrat. They both challenge him profoundly, but in very different ways.
Let's talk about Porfiry first. His approach seems like a masterclass in psychological manipulation.
It really is. Pure cat and mouse. He never directly accuses Raskolnikov, at least not initially. Instead, he subtly brings up Raskolnikov's published article on the extraordinary man theory.
Discusses it right to his face.
Right to his face, letting Raskolnikov know very clearly, I know what you wrote, I know what you think, and I suspect you. all without needing hard evidence at that point.
And Porfiry's actual method seems designed to undermine Raskolnikov's whole intellectual stance.
It absolutely is. Porfiry actually admits he already searched Raskolnikov's room, but he explains why he won't arrest him right away.
If he suspects him.
Because, Porfiry says, arresting him early would give Raskolnikov moral support. It would give him something concrete to fight against, solidify his resolve, perhaps.
So Porfiry just waits.
He chooses to wait. He wants Raskolnikov to break psychologically under the strain. And crucially, Porfiry sees Raskolnikov's failure to grab those 1,500 rubles as the definitive proof.
Proof of what?
Proof of his commonness. That he wasn't truly extraordinary after all. That he panicked like any ordinary criminal. For Raskolnikov, this is a devastating intellectual defeat, perhaps worse than prison.
Wow. And then there's Svidrigailov. He just appears, right, after his wife dies.
He does, quite unexpectedly. After his wife, Marfa Petrovna, dies under somewhat suspicious circumstances, Svidrigailov even claims her ghost visits him.
Creepy. And Raskolnikov sees him as, what? A dark reflection?
A terrifying mirror, perhaps. A potential future self, if he fully gives in to his own nihilistic or amoral impulses. Svidrigailov is utterly devoid of conventional morality.
And he pursues Dunya, Raskolnikov's sister.
Relentlessly, yes.
Yeah.
It's very unsettling. But his final act, it's morally baffling.
He commits suicide, doesn't he?
He does. A very shocking, almost mundane suicide. But just before that, he performs these acts of unexpected large-scale charity.
Charity, Svidrigailov.
Yes. He gives a huge sum, 10,000 rubles, to Sonya, specifically for the Marmeladov children's care and future expenses.
That's surprising.
But listen to this detail. It's amazing. Within that money, he specifically sets aside 1,500 rubles for the Marmeladov children.
Wait, 1,500 rubles, that's the exact amount.
The exact amount Raskolnikov missed in the pawnbroker's chest of drawers.
Whoa, what does that signify?
It feels like Dostoyevsky, showing his utter disdain for Raskolnikov's intellectual justifications for wealth and action. Svidrigailov, the actual moral monster, casually dispenses the very sum Raskolnikov failed to get and could never use according to his grand theory. It suggests true charity, or even just the movement of wealth, is completely divorced from Raskolnikov's twisted intellectual framework.
That's powerful. Okay, this seems to lead us towards the climax, the moment of confrontation and maybe grace. Raskolnikov's confession.
Yes, but crucially, he doesn't confess to the police first. He confesses to Sonya.
And that confession itself is fascinating. It's not really about remorse initially, is it?
Not really. It's more like an admission of a failed experiment. He tells her his motive wasn't really poverty, not deep down. It was to prove his theory.
Was I a louse or a man?
Exactly. Could I step over the obstacle or couldn't I? He tells Sonya he failed the test. He even claims the devil drove him to it. It's still framed intellectually as a failure of his will, his idea.
But Sonya's response isn't intellectual at all.
No, it's deeply spiritual and compassionate. She doesn't debate his theory. She gives him a cypress cross to wear. She simply pushes him towards public confession, urging him onto a completely different path.
Away from nihilism towards suffering and redemption.
Towards accepting suffering, towards shared humanity, yes. Towards the possibility of a new life.
And eventually he does confess to the authorities. The outcome at the trial seems surprisingly lenient, though.
It is, considering the crime. But there were mitigating factors brought up. The defense argued he confessed willingly, eventually. They highlighted his poverty and the psychological strain, suggesting a state of temporary mental disturbance.
And witnesses spoke up for him, mentioning past good deeds.
Yes. Things like him saving children from a fire years earlier, helping a poor student. These things counted in his favor.
So the sentence wasn't death or life imprisonment.
No, he receives a sentence of only 8 years of hard labor in Siberia, which, for the time and the crime, was relatively light.
And our sources mention that even in Siberia, it's a difficult transition for him. His pride is still a factor.
A huge factor. He struggles immensely in prison, still feeling alienated, still wrestling with his pride. It's not an instant transformation.
Until the very end.
Until the very end, in the epilogue.
Yeah.
It's only then, through Sonya's unwavering, devoted love and presence, that he finally breaks down. The great intellectual is finally humbled, not by logic or punishment, but by radical, unconditional love. That's when the possibility of genuine rebirth emerges.
So looking back, we've really seen Raskolnikov's journey from this peak of intellectual arrogance.
Right down into the messy reality of human suffering, the chaos of violence, and its psychological fallout.
The novel doesn't just ask about crime, does it? It digs deep into the nature of repentance, the cost of it.
And the limits of a purely intellectual approach to morality, one that's completely cut off from empathy and human connection.
Which leaves us, and you, the listener, with a final thought to maybe chew on.
Yes, a provocative question. Considering Raskolnikov's intense, agonizing pride throughout the book, and his final realization that he was not one of the extraordinary men, was his confession ultimately a true moral choice, a moment of genuine spiritual atonement?
Or was it simply the final, unavoidable collapse of his philosophical experiment, the point where his theory completely failed him, leaving him with no other path forward?
Was it redemption or just defeat? That's one of the core ambiguities, the core questions the novel really leaves with you.
We hope this deep dive has given you a fresh perspective on this truly immortal work. This week, we're in the world of Crime and Punishment, a turbulent and psychologically dense classic. We're anchoring in the harbor of a new work next week, and I look forward to your comments. Goodbye for now. I'm your host. Continue reading and questioning.